Peace. You are tuned into Edible Activists with your host and favorite edible activist, Melissa L. Jones. On this show, we honor Black people and their stories in food and agriculture, celebrating legacy, traditions, contributions, and creativity that all stem from the land. So tune in and let's get started. Peace and welcome to The Edible Activist. I am your host and favorite edible activist, Melissa L. Jones. I am excited to welcome Olivia and Deja, co-hub leaders of Black Girl Environmentalist DC, to Edible Activists. Olivia holds a master's in environmental global health from George Washington University and is passionate about building community and advocating for environmental justice. Deja, with a BS in environmental science from the University of San Francisco, is dedicated to mitigating climate change and connecting Black women to nature through social experiences. Together, they're leading the charge in creating a more inclusive and empowering climate movement here in DC. Welcome, ladies.
Thank you for having us.
Thanks.
So in harmony already.
I know. Love that.
I appreciate y'all both for being here. I am a big fan of the platform, and I'm excited to invite both of you all in because you all have been doing the work, boots to ground here in DC. And so I want to be able to extend this platform to you both to share everything about BGE, but then also about all the great work that you guys have been leading here in DC. So for some of you, or maybe not, some of you guys may be familiar with Black Girl Environmentalists. I am a big fangirl, and shout out to Wawa Gathero, who is the founder and just the creative visionary behind this entire movement of Black women in environment. And so I want to start off by sharing a little bit about her vision and just more about BGE for those who aren't aware.
Yeah, definitely. We would not be here without Wawa. And BGE kind of started in 2021. While everyone was inside during the pandemic, there was kind of this digital resurgence in need to call out the lack of Black people and Black spaces within the environmental movement. And Wawa, who had been doing the work, writing articles and narratives and, putting that out there, she had noticed this gap, and at that time, a lot of people had been reaching out to her as well, saying like, we need a space and a platform for us. And so that's when kind of BGE began on Instagram. So it started as this digital platform, and then over time and over the years, it got bigger and bigger. And thanks to how amazing Wawa is, she was able to secure funding and make it a nonprofit. And so now BGE does programming. So it's not just Instagram, but they also have internships and the Hub program, which me and Olivia are part of as the DC Hub leads.
That's awesome. Olivia, do you want to follow up to any of the amazingness that Deja?
Honestly, I think Deja covered every single thing you need to know about BGE. I think something to highlight is the focus on Black women and girls. That is really what the focus of being like a Black girl environmentalist stems from. It's being a Black woman and being a Black girl. So that's the only thing that I would add to it.
I love that. What brought you both? I mean, you've both majored in pretty much environmental studies, and now you're like anchored into it. What brought you directly into this space to help like expand the vision that Wawa had, for this platform?
I think I'll take this one first. So what's interesting is that I think love for the environment really started with just growing up like in the South, like always being out in nature. And then it kind of matriculated into like the big question I want to ask, like, what do you want to be when you grow up? Like, what do you want to do? And I think finding myself integrated post graduate school was in the community. And I found that through Black Girl Environmentalist. And that's something that kind of fueled my passion for nature, but also allowed me to pair it with my love for the community. So having those two combined, I think is something that any Black girl, whether you're environmentalist by a book definition or not, I think needs to have that fuel to make sure that we are leading that charge. And that's the thing that I love about being a hub lead for DC.
I like that you pointed out that you don't necessarily need to be defined by like what a dictionary or platform defines as an environmentalist, right? Like from I guess you're from Georgia, my family's from Mississippi, so I'm going to say from one, southern girl in my heart to another. But even having come up here when I was little, my sister and I played outside all day. I will run the story into the ground. We played out all day. Digital era was like really non-existent. I'm an 80s baby. I'm sure I'm way older than Olivia and Deja with my age out there. And our fingernails were dirty. We climbed trees. I remember sap on trees. I remember when blackberries grew outside of our apartment building into like an urban area. And we came back in just salty and sweaty, but like I remember that. And so being able at my 40 plus age now to be able to connect back to my youth, I'm like, I was a baby environmentalist
Yeah,
out there
exactly.
exploring and
Exactly.
jumping in streams and all of that. Like we were picking up, all sorts of worms and caterpillars and catching fireflies. And we were out in nature. And so I thank you for saying that because again, and not to take away from those with the credentials and who have studied this,
Right, right.
but there is something to be said for someone who is just like immersed out in the environment. That's just like one layer to it. Deja, how about you?
No, totally agree with what you were saying. And Olivia definitely brings that to our hub too, especially with the events that we do, whether they are really environmental, so like gardening or hiking, or whether they're more focused on wellness and doing yoga and art and things like that. And I love that she brings that to our hub. For me, I became involved in BGE while I was living in San Francisco. I met the lead there, and she wanted some help to run it. And it was the perfect opportunity for me. I'm really passionate about climate change and passionate about environmentalism. I studied it in college. But at the same time, in undergrad and in those spaces, and even in workspaces too, I was usually the only one. And so it was kind of hard to find other people who shared the same interests that I did. So when I learned about BG, I was like, this is perfect. I can make friends and still be in the environment. So that's kind of how I got into it.
Yeah. And now me and Deja are besties.
Now we're
So
besties.
Talk about a connection. I love that. Not don't want to go too off script but sometimes that happens on this show. And I promise I'm gonna pull us back in. But you say climate
Yeah.
and we are in interesting times. And honestly, to be fair, it's been interesting for decades. When we were little, we had people in this space, not many that look like us, right?
Yeah.
I can be assured of, pardon me, who are very concerned about like our climate, even when I was little. What is something that kind of really scares you the most about like what's happening in our climate right now? Or and we're going to dig into some of the programming that you all have done recently. What have been some of the conversations with some of these like phenomenal Black women who have joined you in these spaces and conversations around climate change?
I think that what scares me the most is people losing their way of life.
Mm,
Outside of Black Girl Environmentalist, I work to try to attempt to mitigate greenhouse gases and the warming of the atmosphere, and a lot of that is so that people can keep their way of life. So whether you are a fisherman in New Orleans or whether you have a farm in Northern California, like whatever you're doing, you have the right to do those things. And the worst part about climate change for me is that it takes away your everyday, whether it's through fires or flooding, environmental racism, whether it's through you can't live in that neighborhood anymore, you know. So those are the things that scare me
Deja,
the
don't
most.
rile me up about environment.
That's a
Don't
whole
rile
nother
me,
podcast
don't rile me
episode.
up on this show about
Whole
that.
other thing.
Do not.
Yes.
Do not.
Yeah.
Thank you for that. I appreciate that. What are you? I think you guys just came off of a busy weekend with the program, with some
We did.
programming, and correct me if I'm wrong, but
Yeah.
what have been some of the experiences that you all have put together that that these amazing women have engaged in thus far?
Yeah, I think one of our first, I guess, events happened last year. It was a picnic at what is now known as Malcolm X Park. I think it's called Meridian Hill Park if you
Mhm.
look it up on Google Maps, but we call it Malcolm X.
Right up there.
You know,
Right up the
yes,
Yeah.
street from us.
it's super close and it's a wonderful landscape to just enjoy. And we had just kind of like a welcome. We wanted to really engage different women, whether they're like in high school, college, to come and just meet us. Because I think something that Deja and I are trying to do in this community is keep awareness high. Something to go back to your climate question is that I think awareness is kind of dying down with there's so many other things going on that we're so focused on that
Mhm.
us kicking off this event was to let people know that, hey, we are here. We're a group that is aware of it and want to
Mhm.
continue to like bring you guys in. And then we followed up with a vision board workshop, which is really cool. We had another event where we checked out a local, not a local, but a Smithsonian botanical gardens where they had a new floral exhibit, which was really great. And we kind of just been like really, I guess, expansive of what we did. We weren't limiting ourselves to just have discussions or like community connects, but wanting to make sure that we covered all bases. So whether that was gardening through our event last week, or that was just bringing girls together in a space that felt safe, I think our programming so far has covered like all areas.
That's awesome. What has been one of your favorites, Deja, of all the programming?
All of them. I like to do a lot of things,
Good answer.
Yeah.
not to brag too much. We did gardening this past weekend, and that was really enriching to me.
That was that
Yeah.
was it City Blossoms?
City
City
Blossoms.
Blossoms.
Okay, shout out
It
to
was
City
their
Blossoms.
first gardening workday of the season. Stay tuned with their newsletter and their
Nice.
Instagram. They're going to do them weekly at different sites, and then also monthly with the work days. I really enjoy spring and being outside and also being in the dirt and connecting with other Black women who also like doing that same thing. There's just something healing and relaxing about being able to be in nature and be in a safe space with people like you as well. So that has probably been my favorite event so far.
I love that. Well, you guys will get along great with all the growers and farmers who come on this show.
Yes.
And if you're looking for other activities, I'm sure they would love to
Sign us up. Sign us up.
No, that's a real plug, Olivia.
Right.
That's a real plug. So what I want to just shift gears just slightly. What does environmental justice look like when Black and brown communities lead the way?
I can take this one. Actually, something that like came to mind when I thought about this question was healing and restoration. I think that is something that is missed or people don't really put more awareness to, especially like. If we're speaking facts here, majority of where Black and brown people are housed and located regionally, whether that's like the deep South where you and I are from, Melissa, or more like urban areas, is based by the byproduct of systemic racism. And so when that looks like is for justice moving forward, that looks like encompassing that healing from that generational trauma. And
Mm,
making sure that we're ensuring that communities going forward have the tools that we need to restore, to continue to grow. And that includes our ecosystems as well as our health too.
did you want to add on to that?
Well, perfect. 10 out of 10.
And I said I wasn't going to write any notes, I promise, but
That's just
Listen,
this one was
how
different.
she is. She's always on it.
probably more prepared than me. Okay.
No.
No, I think that's powerful. And Deja, just to connect to something that you had mentioned earlier around when I had asked, like, what is one thing that you fear, or what are you hearing, from the community that you're building? Is that like this loss of life? And everything that you just said directly connects to that. And it is such a significant thing when we talk about devastation in the climate. It is literally losing your way and not being able to do the things that you want to do on a daily, and things that people just don't even think about, to be truthfully honest. So, and there's no time like now to really have that restoration and to really have that calm and to really tap into the healing of our traumas, which we just have so much of, and super afraid of what this environment literally is doing right now. So I thank you for naming that. I know for myself, I'm not trying to turn this into about me. This is about y'all. But I made a commitment. Actually, I did a episode on this when I was also doing some promotion for Taking Nature Black, which shout out to Wawa Gatheru, who was
love her.
Round of applause.
Yes,
literally.
round of applause. Who was just a great keynote speaker at that conference. But I committed myself to spending way more time outdoors. If I can just be brutally transparent, I don't see any other way that I will be able to survive mentally if I don't do that.
Yeah.
I like, I'm not on edge, y'all. Let me just be clear.
Right. Okay.
You don't need to dial the hotline, but I don't see any other way. And we talk a lot about going back to your roots, going back to your childhood. What did you do? And that's if you had those privileges. That's if you grew up in a space where you could do that, and acknowledging that not everyone grew up where they could, be outdoors, or they had different, family circumstances. And so I know that I've made that commitment to myself, and maybe doing some other daring things, because I'm scared of bugs and snakes. I'm not lying. So we're going to wrap up in just a few, but
if it's okay, Melissa, I want to add something really
absolutely.
quickly. Yeah. So I work in healthcare, so a little bit different than Deja in the climate space, but something that I've been hearing more recently in conversations is how important this need for climate is in the healthcare spaces, especially with hospitals and clinics. There are like what we would call like the White House to, local communities, because people go to them, they look at that staple for how can we get better. And a conversation that they don't have enough is how can we, as like those staples and communities, do better with looking at not just sometimes the medical or pharmaceutical ways of healing or supporting our communities, but how can we look at our environments and say, okay, what do we need to clean up? So that's something that I think like in this current environment is becoming a little bit more noticeable. It's still kind of one of those touchy subjects because they don't have the funding for it, that it usually needs to go in the opposite direction. But something that's very interesting is that outside of those climate powerhouse organizations, that healthcare companies, clinics are starting to look into it. It's just a matter of who and when, right? So hopefully, within my crossover with this, there's some way that I can influence a little bit that those two things are important and they kind of go in tandem. They're not separate, right?
Wow. Thank you for pointing that out. We got to have you back on the show to go down that lane. I'd like to learn more, but no, thank you. That is super important. That is super important. There were a couple years ago, I flew into Denver. I was going to go see my niece in Colorado Springs, and I was there. My mom and I were walking through the airport, and it's all these Black women. They had on backpacks, they had on boots and everything. And I was like, where are they going? I want to go with them. And I believe it was like the Black Girls Hike platform. I believe there is a Black Girls Hiker or something. I could be it, but there is a platform specifically dedicated to Black women who hike. And I was like, this is just pure magic, pure gold. I love this. If you all could create a day of where all of the hubs came together and just did. I know this question was not on my list. So if you don't have an immediate answer, like I get it. You can answer it as fragmented as you need to. But if you had a day of everyone coming together from all the hubs, what would that look like, or what would it feel like? Or what would that energy what I know this was not this wasn't a question on their list, but I just thought about it.
If all of the hubs could do one event in one place,
Yeah.
I wonder like what would the
To get him
theme
like
be?
cheaper by the dozen, like a
Yeah,
just like
low-key. We all
craze.
have what's funny is that all of the hubs have different personalities, like, in different cities,
I'm
and so
sure.
they do,
Yeah.
like, different kinds of events. Like, the
Yeah.
events in Knoxville are different than the
Mm-hmm.
events in San Francisco.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
I would imagine it would be a all of us doing, like, different stations maybe,
Yes.
and then, like, you pick your day or you pick your choice, and
Mm-hmm.
then you can experience different
Mhm.
aspects of climate, environmentalism,
I
whatever
like
it
that.
is.
Yeah, I was thinking kind of when you said like different stations, there's something since we're in Adams Morgan,
Yeah.
there's something that's called the Adams Morgan Porch Fest, where all these like restaurants are like open, they do great deals. You can go up, and everywhere and out. And I feel like we would do something like that where we're here tabling about climate change and
Mhm.
greenhouse gases. Knoxville is taking, hey, let's do a workshop about how to become a better floriculturalist, things like
Right.
that where people can not just get from like reading a text. When I keep going back to textbooks, that people get so like honed in on like what does a textbook say or what does the definition mean about this, but learning
Mm-hmm.
from us as Black women who've been in that
Mm-hmm.
space, I think that's something that I think we would offer if we had like a big like event, something like that.
Agree. And
Yeah.
bringing it to DC at some point, I would like all of because there are a lot of like environmental orgs in DC. It would be cool if we could all do one event one day. That's one of my
I do want y'all to know this is an unintentional pitch for
dreams.
Wawa and her team. Okay. So the idea was birthed here. So I want to see it because I just envision it in my mind. So thank you for sharing. That would be pretty dope though, Olivia. That'd be really dope.
Keep it in mind.
Hmm.
What is one truth about Black people and the environment that needs to be amplified?
I think for me, I'd say that like Black people have always been in the environment and in the environmental movement, and it's taken a lot of resilience to still be in it. I don't think that being Black and being an environmentalist is a new concept. Like even when we think back to the '60s, and also just in general, like fighting against redlining and pollution and highways through our neighborhoods. We've been at the forefront of environmental justice and climate, even if that's not what it was called back then, like
Right.
that's what it is. Even if we're thinking about Black people in swimming, for example, like Black people have a strong relationship to water, and they've had a strong relationship to water for decades and
And
centuries.
not
Like
by choice.
not by
Right.
choice, not
Not
by
by
choice, like,
choice.
it's called wade in the water for a reason, you know what I
Hmm.
mean? And it's taken a lot of resilience to now be reclaiming the ocean, reclaiming water spaces. So that's one truth that I don't think gets talked about a
Mm,
lot. We're not new to this, we're true to this.
that's a t-shirt.
Hello.
Right.
What about
Man, I
you?
don't know if I mean, adding to that, Deja, I would only say something that came to mind as a quote that I like live by is don't let anyone tell you what you deserve. And when I think about where our current climate is, I think a lot of minority groups kind of shy away or shelter because it's like, okay, there's only some of us that care about the environment. There's not enough of us. But when you look at where the environment is and where your placement is in the environment, to your point, we are the environment. So don't let someone or a new, mandate tell us that like we don't deserve good food. Like we, have to continue to live in these food deserts, that we don't, deserve good quality like resources to have like better heat and light, so it's remembering who we are at the forefront and knowing that like just like anyone else, we deserve to have a good environment.
And bringing it back to BGE, like, that's what we're trying to do in DC, and, like, that's why we're, like, expanding the events to be beyond just what you think of, like, environmentalism, like we're
Mm.
bringing that sustainability into our daily lives and being able to do those things, whether it's through a wellness series or the other events that we have planned.
That's awesome. I always like to say, we're not new to it, but true to it.
That's a good one.
Love that. What can folks expect this spring and summer? Like, what else do you guys have brewing?
I
Yeah.
would say
Mhm.
with spring on its way, to your point, I think we've been in this like, okay, we want to just get out. So with spring coming in and summer and the new seasons are changing, definitely a lot more outdoor activities. We
Mhm.
actually got a note that someone in Baltimore wants us to come into that area too. So it's like, okay, now we're expanding outside DC and getting into the DMV, so
I love
Baltimore
that.
area.
And shout out to Baltimore.
Shout
Right,
out to
right.
Baltimore.
So it's like, we're going to look at now what can we do that doesn't just affect our community in DC, but other areas that are in the DMV area that are connected to us. So we're trying to bridge that connection and bring us kind of like a full circle moment. I think that's going to be really great for us this season.
That's awesome. And I'm glad that you said that, because even though, it's the DC hub, it's not just the district. And we have many of folks, who live in the DC metro area. And then I know Baltimore is, well, some people argue it's not DC metro.
Right.
We love Baltimore. Shout out to Baltimore. They're a special place. They are called Charm City for a reason. I love Baltimore. So I do like that because it expands beyond the district. It's not just in the city. And it's just an amazing landscape here, with all our trails and parks and, is there any foraging down the road? Because I'm trying to get over my fear of seeing things that I don't want to see, but I do want to forage.
Oh man.
And I have a great person for that if you guys are ever interested.
Have you foraged before? I barely like camping. I can't believe that I'm admitting that. So
I am not a forager. I am open to foraging. If we know a person who is a forager, we are open to having an intro to foraging event.
Yeah.
I can hook you up. I can hook you both up.
Okay.
We're about to wrap. What type of support can you all use right now?
I would say some what support that we can use right now is maybe partnerships as a hub that is kind of starting from the ground up. It's like, who do we talk to and the right people that we're talking to, not the ones like, oh, that sounds like a great opportunity. Let me get back to you. You never hear back from them. So you find yourself, kind of just like cold calling partners. But I think what we could really use is that support to say like, hey, we like your initiative. We want to help. Here's how we can help you. And I think that's something that we could really use that doesn't just set us up for Deja and I right now, but can take this DC hub to the next level when it might turn over to some other hub leads or something like that. But making sure that we are making the right partnerships, not just right now, but for a good time.
For sure. How many are in the hub? About rough number, do you know?
I know
you don't have the approximate number. I'm just it's okay.
I don't know, maybe like 20. I don't know.
They show up
50.
And
50.
50. We're growing.
We are growing.
We used to be 20. Now we're at 50.
That's
are
huge.
Growing.
Listen, it takes resources and energy and everything to build a community. And so you will both have been, this is my first time meeting you all. It's so crazy because literally Deja is my neighbor, y'all. Just learned that. I've never met her in my life, never seen her. I stay in my apartment, don't go anywhere. But I knew, again, I've been following BGE for quite some time. And again, shout out to Wawa Gatheru, but I knew that I wanted to bring in the DC, the leads, the DC hub. And your work is incredible. And I just really appreciate, just boots to the ground work that you all have been doing, and know that building community isn't easy, but I'm sure it is mostly fun for y'all too.
It's very rewarding.
It's so rewarding. Yeah. And I'm sure, especially in a time like this, just coming together and just being in harmony with one another and nature, just, really, it's just energizing for the both of you all. So where can folks find you on social? And let me just be clear, y'all, the direct ask of the support was strategic partnerships, not the, let me think about, no, we don't need that. Intentional strategic partnerships, money, dollars, thank you, to support these.
The ones that fold.
The ones that fold. Don't give me the ones that clink.
Exactly.
Where can folks find y'all on social?
You can find us on Instagram at BGE DC Hub. On our Instagram, in our bio is a link tree with a link to our WhatsApp group where we post events. And I think that's all. And you can follow me and Olivia on social media too, if you want to keep in contact with us personally.
Yeah, she said it. I mean, I will even plug our email. It's bgedchub@gmail.com.
For the partnerships, email us and we'll be in touch.
All righty. Thank you both so much.
Thank
I appreciate you for being on the show. First time.
First timers.
Yes, thank you so much for having us.
Of course.
We're
This is
so happy.
super important to me. All right. Thank you all so much for tuning in. Peace. Thank you for listening to Edible Activists. You can find today's episode on Spotify, iTunes, and Simplecast, and follow along on all social media platforms at Edible Activists for updates. Want to support this platform? You can do so by purchasing our commerce or connecting with me about media partnerships at www.edibleactivist.com. In the words of Baba Tariq Adunu, there is no culture without agriculture. Peace.